Don't you just love square roots? Well, luckily enough for you, today we're going to work on multiplying square roots. Our first example out of 4, we're going to go through and do square root of 3 times square root of 3. Put underneath the same radical. By definition, you can go and do that, is square root of 3 times 3. Square root of 3 times 3 is square root of 9. Square root of 9 is a perfect square, and that answer is 3. I do not need to have the radical symbol with it. I just by definition need to have two numbers. We could have stopped right here because we have two of them that equal this number underneath, and that is the answer of 3. Our second example here, moving forward, is we're going to go and take two numbers that are not the same. Notice back here we had two that were the same, and I was able to get that answer fairly quickly. Here I can go through and do two ways to solve this method. I can break down 15 into square root of 3 times 5, and then I just bring along that square root of 3 that I had in the back. Take that and regroup that. Well, I have two pairs of those. That's 9. I get that on the outside, and then I leave what's left on the inside, and that's my final simplified answer. Or I can go and take 15 times 3 and make that square root of 45. Square root of 45, I then can break down into two radicals, two square roots that give me 45, square root of 9 and 5. Square root of 9 is my perfect square I'm looking for, and that answer is 3. And I drop the radical from it. And then what do I have left in my radical was the square root of 5. That's my second example today. Third example that we're going to do is going through and finding out the square root of a negative. I know, pretty exciting stuff here. Well, we talked about the square root of 4 being 1 square root of 4 without knowing that 1 is visible there. So that times negative 3 gives me an answer of negative 3. Positive 1 times negative 3. Square root of 4 and square root of 4, I'm going to put underneath the same radical now. I can go through and do the commutative property and switch things around, putting that underneath the same radical. Square root of 4 times square root of 4, or 4 times 4 gives me 16. I still am going to carry down that negative 3 on the outside, realizing that the square root of 16 is 4. I still have that negative 3. And now what do I do with the 2? You got it. We're going to multiply. And so my final answer there becomes the negative 12. Our last problem today that we're going to do is dealing with, whoa, what is that stuff? Crazy, right? I have square root of 3 times negative 2 square root of 6. Well, I'm going to go through and take my radicals again, put them underneath the same square root, and then that negative 2 comes on the outside again. Square root of 3 times 6, so that's 18. I'm still bringing down that negative 2 alongside, knowing that I'm going to go through and multiply it by the end of anything comes out of this. Two numbers that give me 18, well, I could have done 3 and 6, but those weren't perfect radicals. So I'm going to break that down to square root of 9 times square root of 2, bringing down that negative 2 with it yet. Square root of 9 is 3. I still have left that square root of 2. And then on the end, I have the negative 2 on the outside as well. The last thing I have, that the answer is square root of 2. And then negative 2 times that 3 gives me that negative 6 there. That ends today's multiplying square roots. If you have any questions, ask Mrs. Massalter, your neighbor, or Mr. and Mrs. Google, and we'll help you out in class. That's it for one thing. If you have any leftover Halloween candy, Mr. Brandel will take that. That ends today's Screencastify. Happy reading and listening.